Good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today's June the 30th, 181st day of the year. Just 184 days remain to the year's over with. Holidays and observances. Social Media Day. Post, retweet, reblog, comment, hashtag. All of it is found online. National Meteor Watch Day and a National Asteroid Day. National Corvette Day, run out and buy one. National Outfit of the Day, and a National Sailor Moon Day. Start a rewatch or reread of the popular manga and anime series Sailor Moon. Please take my children to work day. World Snorkeling Day. We're Youth of Faith Day. The National Day of Parliamentarianism. It's Wimbledon. Goes on until July 13th. Rabbit Week. Famous people born on this day. Mike Tyson. Lizzie Kaplan. Michael Phelps. And it's Children's Awareness Month. Well, let's see what we got in the news. There's always something going on, especially this day and time. Well, in Idaho, there was a brush fire. And when the firefighters showed up, they were ambushed. The man with a gun was found dead on the mountain where the active shooter situation unfolded. They may well have gotten him. The man was arrested after disrupting the Senate debate on Trump's Big Beautiful Bill. Alan D. Rogers of Florida, arrested for unlawful conduct, started screaming, "You people are awful." Satellite photos show ongoing activity at Iran's Hudnall nuclear complex after the airstrikes. Maxar Technologies imagery shows excavators and personnel attempting repairs at the damaged enrichment facility. It was targeted by Israeli forces June 23rd, one day after we dropped bunker buster bombs. This new high-resolution satellite imagery shows an excavator and several personnel positioned immediately next to the northern shaft on the ridge above the underground complex. Well, the New York City mayoral candidate, Barney, refuses to denounce the controversial phrase in a BBC interview about globalizing the Intifada. Well, the Canada to resume trade talks with the U.S. after rescinding the digital services tax. They agreed to resume negotiations and halt digital service tax following Trump's ultimatum of higher tariffs. I think folks have learned not to mess with Trump. The SJSU trans athlete scandal is growing amid new revelations. The lawyer leading the San Jose State University transgender lawsuit reacts to controversial probe and trans athlete alleged misconduct. It's a transgender volleyball player, and that controversy reignited last week. Fox News Digital reported the Mountain West Conference hired the same law firm to investigate the trans athlete's misconduct allegations that the conference was using to defend the athletes' eligibility for the conference tournament in court. Can you say conflict of interest? Well, defund the police movement's facing absolute rejection as murders drop and the police budgets increase. Philadelphia, Minnesota, and Denver experienced a 28 to 59% drop in homicides after boosting law enforcement budgets. Major Cities Chiefs Association, which compiled data from January 1st to March 31st in 2025 and 2024, showed that several cities with increased funding for police have also experienced a drop in homicides. And let's see what else we got. Pennsylvania residents fight subpoenas in the Brian Kohlberger, Idaho murder case. Royal family iced out Prince Harry, and his resentment is growing as Prince William maintains a frosty silence. Experts claim Prince William plans to rely on Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie in preparation for his future reign. He's going to ignore his niece and nephew with Harry. Relationship between the brothers is said to be severely fractured. Not because of the Duke of Sussex's royal exit, but due to the deafening silence from his brother. Mamdani defends a plan to tax whites and the rich. He calls that a fair policy. NATO countries have agreed to spend 5% of their gross domestic product on defense. The Eastern European nations Poland and Estonia led NATO in spending as a shared EDP to counter Russia's aggression. Let's see. Top 5 countries with the highest defense spending as a percentage of GDP, according to data released by NATO, was number 5 was Greece, number 4 was Latvia, number 3 was us, United States, number 2 was Estonia, and number 1 was Poland. Ukraine has exited the Global Mine Treaty after Russia launches a massive aerial assault. Michelle Obama's podcast expands as Democrats are warned not to rely on the Obamas for saving the party. Caitlin Clark may break away from WNBA to form her own basketball league. Missouri factory workers found dead inside an industrial oven, according to the police. Perry County officials confirm OSHA will investigate the workplace accident. There's a Guatemalan national working under an alias found dead inside an industrial oven at a cereal plant in Missouri last week. Nicholas Lopez Gomez, working under the name of Edward Avila, was located by officers, emergency medical service personnel, and firefighters. Iran's says dozens were killed in an Israeli strike on a prison. Confirms the prosecutor death. President Trump's new American doctrine means peace through strength. Strikes against Iran demonstrate Trump's willingness to support his allies while pursuing diplomatic solutions. Okay, what else we got? Well, we've been talking about UFO incidents. We're going to start out talking about the Fort Itaipu incident, UFO at the Brazilian fortress, November 4th, 1957, in Sao Paulo, Brazil. The city is Praia Grande. Now, it's a significant event in the history of UFO sightings in Brazil. It occurred on the night of November 4th, 1957. Cold War was at its peak, of course. The entire world was on alert for the possibility of a nuclear confrontation. This particular context of international tension, reports of unidentified flying objects often received a great suspicion and treated with extreme caution by both military as well as government authorities. Fort Itaipu, military fortress located in Praia Grande in the state of Sao Paulo, was a strategic installation for Brazilian coastal defense. The night of the incident, the soldiers on guard saw an unidentified luminous object flying over the region at a speed with maneuvers that didn't correspond to any known aircraft of the time. The object was described as being circular in shape, emitted intense light, moving at a dizzying speed without making any sound. The observation lasted several minutes, captivating the attention of the entire garrison. The object eventually disappeared on the horizon, leaving behind it a lot of questions and not very many answers. The incident was officially recorded by the military authorities, but the details and conclusions of the investigation remained largely inaccessible to the public, which has fueled speculation and theories about the nature and origin of the object. Now, about 8 p.m. that evening, the guards at the military fortress of Fort Itaipu, located, as I said, in Praia Grande, saw an unidentified aerial phenomena that caught their attention and that of many other observers in the region. Now, the description of the object observed was particularly detailed. UFO was described as having a big disc shape, had a shiny metallic structure reflected the moonlight, measured about 30 meters in diameter, emitted a intense white light with shades of blue and green pulsating rhythmically, seemed to hover over the area at a relatively low altitude, estimated at less than 500 meters, and it moved without emitting any perceptible sound that added to the strangeness of the observation. Now, the weather conditions that night were clear, unobstructed sky, and excellent visibility that allowed for a detailed observation of whatever this thing was. The moon was nearly full, providing an additional light source that helped to accentuate the contours and features of the UFO. The wind was weak, didn't seem to affect the movement of the object, which moved with a smooth, controlled trajectory. Now, this object was watched for about 20 minutes as it performed maneuvers that defied the capabilities of any conventional aircraft at the time. First seen moving slowly above the fortress before abruptly accelerating and changing direction several times without following a recognizable flight path. At one point, the UFO completely stopped in the air for several minutes before it resumed its movement. Now, the observation of the UFO at Fort Itaipu was reported not only by the military personnel at the fortress, but also by civilians who lived in the vicinity. And this reinforced the credibility of the incident. Witnesses described the object with remarkable precision. Their accounts were consistent in terms of the shape, size, and color and behavior of the UFO. And the incident is particularly notable due to its military context and quality of the testimonies coming from trained and credible personnel. Accuracy of the descriptions and duration of the observation allowed for the collection of significant details about the appearance of the capabilities of the object, thus contributing to the accumulation of data on unidentified aerial phenomena observed around the world. The first quoted witness was Sergeant João Adil Oliveira. He was on duty that night. About 2 in the morning, he saw a bright object in the sky that seemed to be moving at an incredible speed. The object was circular in shape with a series of flashing lights around its perimeter. And according to Oliveira, the object abruptly stopped above the fortress and remained motionless for about 5 minutes before it vanished over the horizon. Another witness, Corporal Marcos Gomez, was patrolling nearby when he was alerted by Oliveira. Gomez confirms having seen the object, described the light so intense that it illuminated the surface of the fortress as if it were broad daylight. He also mentioned while the object was stationary, you couldn't hear any noise, which was unusual given the apparent size and proximity of the object. Lieutenant Colonel Paulo Sestiniano, who was the commander of the base at the time, was quickly informed of the situation. After seeing the object himself, he ordered a general alert and contacted other military facilities to check if the object had been detected by radar, which it hadn't. Lieutenant Colonel described the object as having a dish shape with a dome on top surrounded by pulsating lights of different colors. In addition to military testimony, several local residents also reported seeing the object. Maria Jose Alves, a resident of a neighboring village, recounted being awakened by a dazzling light coming from outside. Looking out the window, she saw the object suspended above the fortress. She said the object was extremely bright, much larger than an ordinary airplane. Now, these testimonies are collected independently from each other, and they present striking similarities regarding the description of the object and its behavior. The absence of the noise, the speed of the movement, and the ability to remain stationary in the sky, and the intensity of the light were common characteristics in all the accounts. Despite subsequent investigations, no conventional explanation has been found for this incident. It remains a well-documented, mysterious case in the annals of Brazilian ufology. Remember, this is the same country where Antonio Villas-Boas had his sexual encounter with an alien female. Now, when the first reports of the observation and official investigation was launched by the Brazilian Armed Forces, testimonies of the soldiers on guard that night were collected seriously. According to their statements, a bright circular object was seen flying over the fortress at a speed with maneuvers that exceeded the capabilities of any known aircraft at the time. Military authorities immediately set up a security perimeter around the area and began documenting the incident by taking photos and videos. Although most of these documents have never been made public. Radiation measurements were also carried out in the area where the UFO was observed, but those results have never been clearly disclosed, fueling speculation about the nature of this observed object. Investigation also involved thoroughly questioning the witnesses. Soldiers and officers present were questioned about every detail of the event with the aim of determining whether the object could be an experimental aircraft or a weather balloon. Of course, no conclusive evidence was found to support these theories. In the face of a lack of clear conclusions and public media pressure, the Brazilian government decided to form a special committee to investigate the incident. This committee was composed of scientists and military personnel and aeronautical experts. After several months of analysis, a final report was published indicating the observed object didn't correspond to any known aircraft or natural phenomena. The report very clearly avoided speculating on the extraterrestrial origin of the UFO, which of course left this as an open question. Now, one of the most common theories to explain this incident, of course, was misidentification. Some so-called experts suggested what the witnesses saw could be a misinterpreted natural phenomenon, such as unusual reflections caused by particular atmospheric conditions. This hypothesis is often reinforced by the fact that UFO sightings are frequently attributed to confusions with natural phenomena such as bright planets, meteors, and lenticular clouds. Another popular explanation, of course, is that of the secret experimental aircraft. According to this theory, the observed object could be an experimental aircraft developed by some foreign nation, even by Brazil itself. This hypothesis is fueled by the context of the Cold War, during which many countries were testing new aeronautical technologies at utmost secrecy. Supporters of this theory often point to the proximity of the incident to a military facility, suggesting the UFO could be linked to undisclosed military activities. On the other hand, some ufologists lean toward an extraterrestrial origin for the object. This theory, supported by the descriptions of movements and flight capabilities, seem to defy the laws of physics as we know them. Witnesses at the Itaipu incident described an object performing high-speed maneuvers with abrupt changes in direction, which, according to some, could have been achieved by human technologies at the time. In addition to these main theories are more marginal speculations, such as the one suggesting the observations could be linked to paranormal phenomena or parallel dimensions. And although these ideas are generally rejected by the scientific community, they continue to circulate in some UFO circles, which adds a layer of mystery to the incident. The debates about these different theories are often quite heated. Skeptics criticize extraterrestrial and paranormal explanations being unscientific and based on anecdotal evidence rather than solid empirical data. On the other hand, believers in these theories often accuse skeptics of turning a blind eye to potential evidence of a reality that surpasses our current understanding. And the problem is, the scientists take the position if they didn't come up with it, it can't be real. Let's go to Trinidad Island. There was an incident there, January 16, 1958, in the state of Espiritu Santo, the city, Trinidad Island, located in the Atlantic Ocean, about 1,200 meters east of the state of Espiritu Santo. Island of Trinidad was at the time a strategic meteorological and naval station for Brazil. January 16, 1958, an unusual event occurred that captured the attention of the world. Ramiro Baruna, professional photographer who was on board the Brazilian Navy ship Almirante Saldanha, managed to take several photos of an unidentified flying object. These images were taken while he was on the ship's deck, and the UFO was observed by several witnesses, including crew members and scientists present for geological research. The photographs show a disc-shaped object flying at high speed, performing maneuvers that seem to defy the laws of physics known at the time. The incident gained notoriety, especially because the photos were analyzed by the Brazilian Navy, which, after investigation, said the images were authentic. This event remains an important case study for ufologists and continues to spark curiosity and debate about the potential presence of extraterrestrials and advanced technology. The observed object was oval-shaped with a shiny metallic appearance. According to descriptions, about 120 feet long. It was moving at an impressive speed and seemed to be performing maneuvers that defied the capabilities of known aerial vehicles at the time. Witnesses reported the object had sort of light halo around it, which made its sight even more spectacular and mysterious. Now, it was about noon when it was seen. The sky was clear that day, offering perfect visibility, which undoubtedly helped Baruna to capture such clear images of the UFO. The sea was calm, no notable wind that could have affected the trajectory of the object or the stability of the camera used to take the photos. Weather conditions were actually ideal for photography, with sufficient sunshine and few clouds in the sky. This allowed Baruna to take several shots of the object in a short period of time. Photos show the UFO from different angles, providing researchers and skeptics with multiple perspectives to analyze the object. These photographs were taken while Baruna was on the deck of the Brazilian Navy ship. The ship was conducting hydrographic operations in the waters around Trinidad Island. Baruna, who was on board to document the expedition, quickly grabbed his camera when the UFO was spotted, thus capturing one of the most notorious and visually documented incidents in the history of ufology. Trinidad Island incident remains an important case study for ufologists and skeptics alike, with Baruna's photos providing rare and valuable visual evidence of a close encounter with a UFO. And the details of the observation, such as the description of the object, the time, and the weather conditions, continue to play a crucial role in the analysis and interpretation of this event. Admiral Baruna, the photographer, said he was on the ship's deck photographing crew members and landscapes when the UFO appeared. And according to his testimony, the object was oval-shaped with a dome on top and shone under the effect of the sun. UFO reportedly made rapid and erratic movements, changing direction several times before disappearing behind a mountain. And in a few seconds, he managed to take several shots of the object. After the photos were developed, the object was clearly visible, which sparked a lot of interest and speculation. Ship's captain, Jose Teobaldo Villegas, also witnessed the event. He confirmed seeing a strange object in the sky that day. And according to his report, the object had incredible speed and performed maneuvers unlike anything the human technology at the time could produce. Captain Villegas supported Baruna's credibility, stating the photos were authentic and had not been altered. Another important witness to this incident was Lieutenant Homero Ribeiro, an officer in the Brazilian Navy. He corroborated his statements to other witnesses, described the UFO as a bright object moving at a staggering speed. He emphasized the precision of the object's movements and sudden acceleration, leaving no doubt it was not an airplane or any known natural phenomena. In addition to these testimonies, several other members of the ship's crew reported seeing the object, although their descriptions vary slightly in terms of shape and size of the UFO. What remains constant in all the accounts, though, is the astonishing speed of the object and its ability to perform maneuvers that defy the laws of physics as we know them. Now, on receiving the first reports regarding the observation and photographs taken by Baruna, the Brazilian Navy launched an official investigation. Initial stages of that investigation involved questioning the witnesses present on the island of Trinidad during the incident. Among them were several members of the crew of the Brazilian Navy ship, as well as other civilian and military witnesses. The witnesses examined the photographs taken by Baruna with particular attention. Images were analyzed by photography experts to verify their authenticity and to determine if they'd been altered or manipulated in any way. Initial results of this analysis suggested the photos were authentic and had not been modified. In parallel, experts in aeronautics and atmospheric phenomena were consulted to examine the weather and air conditions on the day of the incident in order to determine if what had been observed could be explained by natural phenomena. Experts found no conditions that could have created optical illusions or some of the phenomena that could have been mistaken for a UFO. Investigation also included detailed interrogations of the witnesses. Admiral Baruna himself was questioned several times. He explained how he managed to capture the images, detailing his location on the ship, the orientation of the camera, and the light conditions at the time of the shooting. Other witnesses corroborated his version of the events, claiming to have seen an unidentified flying object with their own eyes before he took the photos. Military authorities released a preliminary report a few months after the incident, indicating the evidence gathered did not allow for a conventional or terrestrial explanation for the observed object. This report was followed by discussions and debates within the scientific community and the government on how to handle the information and the potential implications for national security. And finally, the investigation was closed without a definitive conclusion, leaving open the question of what had actually been observed and photographed that day. Baruna's photographs have remained among the most famous and debated in the history of ufology, often cited as a potential example of photographic evidence of UFOs. Despite the many years that have been passed since that incident, the investigation into the Trinidad Island incident remains an important case study for UFO researchers and enthusiasts worldwide. One of the main theories put forward is that the authenticity of the photographs supported by many ufologists and researchers. According to this perspective, the images taken by Baruna are concrete proof of the existence of extraterrestrial vehicles visiting the Earth. Advocates of this theory rely on the testimony of several crew members of the ship that also observed the UFO, as well as on the technical analysis of the photographs that revealed no obvious signs of manipulation or superimposition. Of course, this theory is contested by others who suggest the photographs could be a result of an elaborate hoax. Skeptics argue that Baruna, as an experienced photographer, had the necessary skills to create fake UFO images. This hypothesis is reinforced by accusations that Baruna could have been motivated by the desire for profit or fame. Some critics point out inconsistencies in the crew members' testimonies and anomalies in the sequence of reported events. Another popular theory is that of a mistake with a natural phenomenon or a man-made object. Some researchers suggest the photographed object could be a weather balloon or another type of misidentified aircraft. This hypothesis is often supported by the fact the area around Trinidad Island was used for various military and scientific activities that could have included the launch of balloons or other experimental devices. Furthermore, there are those that consider the Trinidad incident as a case of collective hallucination, a pareidolia, where the witnesses who would have seen what they wanted to see or misinterpreted ambiguous visual stimuli. The psychological explanation suggests that excitement, anticipation of discovering something unusual can influence individuals' perceptions and lead them to believe in the presence of a UFO when there's not one really there. Of course, keep in mind that there are those that if the UFO landed and the aliens got out, would still deny it was there. Now, the next documented UFO incident was the case of Betty and Barney Hill, an actual alien abduction in the state of New Hampshire. September 19, 1961. City was Portsmouth. On that date, Betty and Barney Hill, an American couple residing in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, had an experience that would become one of the most documented and controversial cases of alien abduction in history. They were coming back home from a vacation in Canada when their nighttime journey took an unexpected turn near the White Mountains region. They saw what they described as a disc-shaped spacecraft silently floating a few meters above their car. Now, they were intrigued, but they were also terrified and continued to watch the object as it moved with jerky and unpredictable movements. Shortly after that, Barney stopped the car on the side of the road to observe the object with binoculars, claiming to have seen several figures standing in the object's windows. Now, what followed remained etched in their memory is a period of missing time during which they couldn't actually remember what had happened. Only later, through hypnosis sessions that the Hills recounted being taken aboard the craft, subjected to medical examinations by beings they described as non-human. Incident not only attracted media and public attention, but also sparked scientific interest and subject of numerous studies and analysis. That evening, they were coming back from a trip to Canada and crossing the isolated regions of the White Mountains. It was about 10:30 in the evening as they were driving on Route 3 near Lancaster. Betty saw a bright spot in the sky that seemed to be moving irregularly. Intrigued, she asked Barney to stop to observe it with binoculars. And the object observed by the Hills was disc-shaped with multicolored flashing lights on its perimeter. It seemed to rotate on itself while moving in the sky. As it got closer, they could clearly distinguish two rows of windows, through which a bright light emanated. Barney, using binoculars, even thought he saw figures moving behind those windows, which increased his concern. The observation lasted several minutes, during which the object descended to a lower altitude, positioning itself directly above the Hills' car. Now, Barney kept a gun in the car and he got it out to better examine the UFO. They reported seeing up to 11 humanoid figures through the windows of the object who were staring at him, which he said terrified him. And a voice he heard in his head ordered him to stay where he was. The weather that night was clear with excellent visibility, which allowed for a detailed observation of the object. No clouds or fog, the moon was nearly full, providing additional light in the night sky. This contributed to the clarity in which the Hills were able to see the UFO and its features. After this episode, the object quickly moved away, disappearing into the night sky. And the couple, in shock, of course, decided to continue their journey home. But they later realized they couldn't account for 2 hours of their travel time, which led to speculation and subsequent investigations to what might have happened during this unaccounted period of time. And they began to observe what they described as they made their trip home from Canada. They began to observe what they described as a bright point in the sky that seemed to move irregularly. Intrigued and worried, they decided to stop several times to observe the object. Betty, having interest in unidentified aerial phenomena, was particularly attentive. She testified to having seen through binoculars a discoid shape with multicolored lights what appeared to be portholes. described having observed figures behind the portholes, which increased her anxiety and curiosity. Barney, for his part, was more skeptical at first, but his testimony largely corroborated that of Betty. At Betty's insistence, he used the binoculars to get a better look at the object. He saw non-human-looking figures wearing what he interpreted as uniforms. They seemed to be staring at him, which immediately provoked a feeling of fear. He put the binoculars back in the car and they went on their trip, trying to escape the object. They then testified to hearing beeping sounds resonating from the trunk of their car, after which they experienced an alteration of their consciousness. They described it as being a state of stupor, as if they were partially conscious but unable to fully respond to their environment. Only later, when they arrived home in Portsmouth, did they realize the journey had taken 2 hours longer than they expected it to take. Within the days following the incident, Betty started to have recurring nightmares where she saw herself at Barney being guided by strange beings through a forest path toward some kind of spaceship. In her dreams, these beings examined the couple in what seemed to be an examination room, using various medical instruments. After a while, they finally decided to consult a psychiatrist, Dr. Benjamin Simon, who used hypnosis to help the Hills recover their suppressed memories from that night. Under hypnosis, Betty and Barney provided remarkably similar and detailed accounts of their experience, including their capture and examinations undergone aboard the object. Barney, who in his normal state didn't believe in extraterrestrials, described with astonishing accuracy the beings he saw, asserting they had large eyes that exerted some kind of psychological pressure on him. However, the couple then experienced a period of missing time, several hours, that they couldn't explain. Only later in hypnosis, they revealed having been taken aboard the alien spacecraft. They described being separated, examined by creatures they described as gray beings with large black eyes. Skin and hair samples were reportedly taken and were subjected to various medical tests. The revelations were recorded and analyzed by psychiatrists and ufologists who found the couple's accounts to be coherent and detailed. They also produced a star map they claimed to have seen aboard the craft, which was later identified as showing the solar system as Zeta Reticuli, information that wasn't yet known to the general public at the time. Testimonies, although controversial, have been widely publicized and analyzed by various experts in ufology and psychology. They've contributed to establishing the case of Betty and Barney Hill as a pillar of the study of alien abduction phenomena. The initial investigation is largely triggered by the Hills themselves, who, after experiencing memory loss and psychological disturbances, sought help from health professionals. Betty had recurring nightmares, and Barney developed an ulceration, which he believed was due to the stress of the experience. The couple was eventually referred to Dr. Benjamin Simon, a Boston psychiatrist specializing in hypnotherapy. But during the hypnosis session conducted by Dr. Simon, Hills recounted, often with great emotion and surprising detail, their close encounter. According to their testimony, hypnosis, they were stopped on a deserted road by a group of strange beings and then guided them aboard their ship. Inside, Betty and Barney said that they were separated, physically examined by the beings, and had biological samples taken. The accounts of the Hills, although collected under hypnosis, were met with a certain degree of skepticism by the scientific community and the authorities. The Air Force, through Project Blue Book, the program tasked with investigating UFO reports, examined the incident. They ultimately classified the many aspects of this case as unresolved, citing a lack of physical evidence and anecdotal nature of the testimonies. In parallel, the growing media interest in the case led to further investigations by ufologists and independent researchers. These investigations often focused on the most mysterious and unexplained aspects of the story, such as the details of the spacecraft and the physical descriptions of the abductors, which were consistent with other UFO reports at the time. The conclusions of these various investigations remained largely inconclusive. Skeptics pointed to the possibility of sleep paralysis, confusion with natural phenomena, or even the conscious or unconscious fabrication of the story by the Hills under the influence of the popular culture of the time, which was saturated with science fiction narratives. On the other hand, believers in the UFO phenomena see in the Hills account. Of course, others who believe in the UFO phenomena see in the Hills account credible evidence of the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence visiting the Earth. Now, one of the most popular theories about this incident is, of course, alien abduction. According to this hypothesis, the Hills would have been physically taken aboard a spacecraft where they were underwent various medical examinations. Theories mainly supported by the detailed accounts of the Hills themselves who described their interactions with the aliens as well as the internal structure of the ship. And Betty Hill's drawings of the star system seen on board the ship, which would correspond to star maps unidentified at the time, reinforce this hypothesis for some researchers. However, there are critics who have expressed doubts about the veracity of these claims. They suggest the Hills' experience could be attributed to hallucination due to sleep or paralysis or even stress, phenomena during which the individual awake is unable to move or may experience intense visual or auditory hallucinations. And this theory is reinforced by the fact that Barney Hill was already psychologically stressed by issues of race and identity, given that he was an African-American man married to a white woman in the 1960s in the U.S. Now, the explanation suggests the incident could be an unconscious staging of kind of folie à deux with a couple that have shared an illusion or a delusion induced by stress. Skeptics of this extraterrestrial hypothesis point out the lack of concrete physical evidence and the fact that Hill's accounts are collected under hypnosis, a method that can generate false or suggested memories. Some researchers have also explored the possibility of a psychosocial origin of the incident, suggesting that abduction narratives could be influenced by cultural representations of aliens and UFOs, widely disseminated by the media at the time. Theory supported by the fact that Hill's description of aliens eerily resembled popular representations and science fiction narratives of the time. And finally, there are those who consider the incident as a possible secret psychological operation conducted by the government, aimed at observing the public's reaction to unexplainable phenomena or even to divert attention from a real secret activity. The incident sparked intense media interest and was the subject of numerous books and TV shows and films. Also helped popularize the idea of alien abduction in popular culture. Well, from the Betty and Barney Hill story, let's move to the Socorro incident. It was April 24th, 1964, Socorro, New Mexico. Now, before this event took place, Socorro was a quiet small town in New Mexico, primarily known for its modest role in the mining industry and as a stopover for travelers. But April 24th, 1964, everything changed when Lonnie Zamora, a town police officer, reported having observed an unidentified flying object accompanied by two small beings near a deserted site on the outskirts of town. This testimony, which was both detailed and supported by physical evidence, attracted the attention of national media and ufology researchers. Incidents not limited to a simple glimpse of the light in the sky, it included a close observation of an object that landed and then took off, leaving behind physical traces and testimonies corroborated by other residents and by subsequent investigations conducted by government agencies and independent researchers. The impact on this event on the Socorro community on the field of ufology continues to be analyzed and debated to this day, making the Socorro incident a crucial case study for understanding the UFO phenomena. Now, Lonnie Zamora was a respected police sergeant at the time, which added significant credibility to the report. At 5:45 p.m., he was pursuing a car for speeding on a road south of Socorro when he heard a noise similar to an explosion. Intrigued and thinking it could be an accident, he interrupted the pursuit and headed toward the source of the noise. Approaching a desert area outside the city, he spotted a shiny object about 150 meters away. Now, at first, of course, he thought it was an overturned car, but as he got closer, he realized the object had an oval shape and was resting on the ground. It was about 4.5 meters long and 2.5 meters high. It seemed to be made of a shiny white metal with no visible windows or doors. It rested on what appeared to be 4 structural feet equipped with what looked like some sort of jacks. He also observed 2 small figures near the object dressed in white suits. However, these figures quickly disappeared from his view when he approached for a closer observation. At this point, the object emitted a loud noise and a whistling sound as if an engine was starting, and Zamora, who feared for his own safety, moved away and found shelter behind his patrol car. Shortly after this, the object took off at high speed without any conventional propulsion noise. It was just a whistling sound that decreased as the object rose. It left behind a blue and orange flame, but no visible smoke. It quickly disappeared in the clear desert sky heading southwest. Weather conditions that day were clear with little wind, which allowed for perfect visibility. The sky was almost cloudless, which ruled out the possibility Zamora could have mistaken the object for a weather phenomenon. And it certainly was not a weather balloon. They don't have passengers, usually. The brightness of the setting sun could have accentuated the brilliance of the metallic object, making the observation even clearer. The detailed observation by Lonnie Zamora remains one of the most documented, intriguing close encounters in the history of UFOs. The precise description of the object, the clear weather conditions, and testimony of a trained police officer have contributed to making this incident an important case study for ufologists and skeptics. The main witness to this event is Lonnie Zamora, who was a respected police officer in the town of Socorro. When he got out of his car to approach the object, that's when the object began to emit a loud noise and blue smoke. He thought it was going to explode, so he got behind his car. And then the object rose into the air before disappearing at high speed. Left no apparent trace on the ground apart from burn marks and deep impressions where it had rested. There was another important witness to this incident, Sergeant Sam Chavez, who arrived at the scene shortly after the UFO left. Chavez confirmed the presence of the ground marks and noted the surrounding vegetation that burnt. Also reported smelling a pungent odor in the air similar to that of ozone. And the Socorro incident was widely covered by local and national media, attracting the attention of the public and ufology researchers. Testimonies of Zamora and other eyewitnesses are largely considered credible due to their professional status and their apparent lack of gain in inventing such a story. The incident remains an emblematic case in the study of unidentified aerial phenomena, fueling debate and speculation about the possible presence of extraterrestrials on Earth. Now, investigators from Project Blue Book, as well as scientists from the Sandia National Laboratory and New Mexico State University, also examined the site. They took soil samples and vegetation samples, which showed traces of abnormally high radiation. These results added an additional layer of mystery to the incident, although definitive explanations remain elusive. From the first hours following the incident, the Air Force dispatched investigators from Project Blue Book, an official U.S. program dedicated to the study of UFOs. Investigators collected testimonies, examined the presumed landing site, and analyzed the traces and residue left on the site. This report from the Air Force highlighted Zamora's credibility as a witness, noting his apparent perplexity and agitation after the incident. Testimonies collected during the investigation included not only that of Zamora, but also that of other witnesses reported seeing a bright object in the sky about that same time. These testimonies added a layer of complexity to the case, suggesting Zamora's observation was not an isolated event. Military authorities also examined the ground marks and burns on the vegetation that seemed to indicate a heavy object had landed and then taken off again. Laboratory analysis also carried out on the soil and vegetation samples taken from the site, but the results did not definitively conclude the origin of the observed anomalies. Despite an thorough investigation, the final report of the Blue Book Project classified the Socorro incident as unidentified. This conclusion was partly due to the quality of physical evidence and testimony, as well as the absence of any plausible conventional explanation. Certainly was not a weather balloon. One of the most popular theories is that of extraterrestrial visitation. This hypothesis suggests the object observed by Zamora was a spacecraft of non-earthly origin, and the beings he saw were occupants of that ship. Supporters of this theory cite the description of the craft and beings, well as the marks and burns found at the site as evidence of advanced and unknown technology on it. Moreover, the behavior of the beings, who seem to be performing some sort of repair or inspection before quickly taking off, reinforces the idea of an exploratory or surveillance mission of extraterrestrial origin. Another explanation put forward is that of a secret military or government project. According to this theory, the object seen by Zamora could have been a prototype of an experimental aircraft tested in secret by the military or other governmental agency. This hypothesis is supported by the proximity of Socorro to several military bases.
Can I make you a cup?
And of course, skeptics also raised the possibility that this was a hoax or a misunderstanding. They say Zamora could have been the victim of an illusion, a hallucination, or an elaborate setup by pranksters. But given his credibility as a witness, this is generally considered unlikely, as well as the presence of physical evidence at the scene. And finally, there are less conventional theories. Rare, poorly understood natural phenomena. Some have speculated Zamora could have observed an unusual form of ball lightning or other strange meteorological phenomena. And 2 little people rode in on that ball lightning. However, the explanation don't cover all the reported details, notably the presence of the beings and the specific marks left on the ground. Now from Socorro, let's go to Corralitos in New Mexico, October 15, 1964. Now, New Mexico, with its deserts and secret military installations, has long been a hotspot for UFO sightings. Notably, the famous Roswell incident of 1947. But the Corralitos incident stands out for the quality and nature of the associated evidence. Now, it was October 15, 1964. An unusual event was captured by an automated astronomical surveillance system located in Corralitos. The system was part of a network of stations operated by the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory, used to track and study solar eclipses. On that day, the equipment, which included high-resolution cameras pointed at the sky, recorded images of an unidentified flying object that exhibited unconventional characteristics. Now, the images show a disc-shaped object with an apparent structure and pulsating lights. What makes the incident particularly notable is the clarity of the images and the fact the object was recorded in broad daylight. Witnesses on site, mainly technicians and scientists, reported seeing the object move at incredible speed, change directions with agility that defied the capabilities of known aerial vehicles at the time. Now, the incident wasn't only visually observed, but also detected by measuring instruments, which added a layer of credibility and mystery to the case. Despite various investigations and speculations, the origin and nature of the object observed that day remain unresolved, which fuels debate and theories in the UFO community and beyond. On that particular day, it was 10:30 in the evening. Weather conditions were clear with almost perfect visibility under a starry sky without the moon. Temperature was cool, typical of an autumn evening in this region. The observed object was described as being disc-shaped, estimated diameter of about 30 meters. Its surface appeared metallic, reflecting the lights of the stars, which gave it a subtle but noticeable glow. The UFO had no visible markings or protrusions, which made it different from conventional aircraft. It emitted a pulsating blue-green light that seemed to encircle the craft. First observed by a group of 3 amateur astronomers who were testing a new telescope. They said the UFO was moving at a constant speed without emitting any audible sound. Its trajectory was linear, crossing the sky from northeast to southwest. At one point, the object performed an astonishing maneuver, changed direction without slowing down, but stunned the witnesses. The astronomers tried to track the object with their telescopes, but its speed and sudden maneuvers made that difficult. They said the UFO was at an altitude of about 10,000 meters when it was first observed, and they've increased its altitude before it vanished from their field of view. Observation lasted about 12 minutes before the object completely disappeared on the horizon. And during this time period, witnesses were able to take photographs, although the quality of the images was limited by the capabilities of the photographic equipment at the time. Observation remains one of the most detailed in terms of the behavior of the object, observation condition, providing a valuable case study for researchers and enthusiasts of unidentified aerial phenomena. Among the main witnesses are John Martinez, a local farmer, Emily Rosas, a retired teacher, and Deputy Sheriff Carlos Mendez. Each provided precise details about what they saw that night, contributing to a complex, detailed picture of the event. Now, John Martinez was out in his fields checking his irrigation system before going to bed when he spotted an unusual light in the sky. According to his testimony, it was a pulsating light, not like that of a plane or a satellite. rather like a luminous disk that changed color from blue to red and to white. He observed the object for about 15 minutes before it suddenly disappeared. He described the object as being silent without any engine noise or other sound associated with any conventional aircraft. The Corralitos, who lived nearby, was alerted by her dog, barking unusually. When she went out to investigate, she saw a flying object seem to be hovering over the area at a low altitude. She described the object as having an oval shape, several lights about its circumference, emitting a soft light that partially illuminated the ground. She mentioned the object was moving slowly and silently from east to west before it suddenly accelerated and disappeared into the night sky. Deputy Sheriff Carlos Mendez was called to the scene after several residents reported the object. When he arrived, he was able to observe the UFO for a short period. He said the object had a discoid shape and it emitted an intense light that made it difficult to see the details of its structure. He also noted the object had the ability to move vertically and horizontally with great agility, which doesn't correspond to the characteristics of any traditional aircraft. His testimony added an official dimension to the incident, reinforcing the accounts of the other witnesses. These testimonies, although coming from different sources, share striking similarities regarding the description of the object, its behavior in the sky. The absence of noise, the speed of the movement, the abrupt changes of direction are elements often recurring in their stories. When the first reports of the observation, which emerged from eyewitnesses in the small community of Corralitos, the military authorities were alerted. Witnesses reported an unidentified flying object of discoidal shape, emitting bright lights, moving at astonishing speeds without any perceptible noise. In response to public pressure and growing media interest, the U.S. launched a formal investigation. Air Force teams under the direction of Project Blue Book were dispatched to the scene. The primary mission was to collect as many testimonies as possible and examine the potential physical evidence. They interviewed several residents of Corralitos who all provided remarkably similar descriptions of the object and its characteristics. In parallel, radar experts and specialized technicians were mobilized to analyze the data from local radars in order to verify if the object had been recorded during its passage. Unfortunately, the results were inconclusive. Military radars hadn't detected anything abnormal, which added a layer of mystery to the case. Lack of radar confirmation led to speculations about the stealthy nature of the object, which appeared capable of evading detection. Investigation also looked into the potential environmental impact of the UFO. Soil and vegetation samples were taken from areas where witnesses claimed the object had been closest to the ground. These samples were analyzed for possible traces of radiation or unusual chemical substances. The results of these tests, though, turned out to be within norms, with no significant anomalies that could be detected that could be linked to the UFOs. After several months of intensive investigation, the final report of the Blue Book was published. Concluded, despite its detailed testimonies and their consistency, there wasn't enough physical evidence to support the existence of an unidentified flying object. The report mentioned the observation could be attributed to natural phenomena not recognized by the witnesses or to optical illusions caused by particular atmospheric conditions. In other words, lie. On that note, we come to the end of the day show. We'll be back tomorrow and talk about more UFO incidents. Until then, Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show saying have a truly great evening.